Hajime, welcome back to another edition of Superhero Spotlight. JT McRoberts here with you once again, and today we're going to walk you through an episode focusing on the one and only Namor, Prince of Atlantis. That's right, the Submariner himself takes center stage once again in the superhero spotlight. Now, some of you might be tiring of these Namor-centric episodes, but he just burst into the public consciousness at large, so to speak, through his appearance in Wakanda Forever, and I think it's important to honor the history and tradition of the actual character as he appeared over the decades, long before the MCU was ever even a swirling thought in Kevin Feige's ballsack. So here you go. We're going to pick up with one of my favorite runs of the late 80s, early 90s, I suppose, yeah. It was right there on the cusp when the first issue launched, but I'm talking about John Byrne's run on Namor the Sub-mariner. This was his second or third series that he picked up upon his return to the Marvel House of Ideas after spending several years revamping and revitalizing the House of Superman over for the distinguished competition. And he came back to work on Avengers West Coast and, of course, She-Hulk, and this third book being Namor the Sub-mariner. At this time, Byrne was, of course, at the height of his powers, and he was just having fun with this particular book. He threw all of his favorite guest stars in it. I mean, you'll see Iron Fist appear from time to time and actually take over one of the major storylines as the book goes into its second year. And, of course, he took advantage of having an opportunity to present Captain America here in the pages of Namor. I really enjoyed this particular storyline because it is a throwback to Namor's origins as a World War II protagonist fighting against the evil Third Reich. This storyline takes over starting with issue 10, but there are hints of it and foreshadowing much earlier in the series, and there's even a key pivotal moment that happens in issue 9 where we catch up with the original Human Torch, Jim Hammond, the android version. This is a follow-up from his awakening in Avengers West Coast. That happened under Byrne's watch over in that particular book where they brought the Human Torch back. It's a really fun series, tied into Vision and the Scarlet Witch and their children and what happened to them. It's really interesting. I'm curious to see if any of that actually makes its way into the MCU, because so far it really hasn't. But this is important, even though it's just a couple pages, because it sets up the Human Torch's involvement in this particular storyline. In this book, Namor has been investigating the various branches of his new Oracle Corporation, which he's taken over, and which he bought out essentially at the ending of the first issue. And he's investigating all the various branches of it. And while he's doing that, these guys show up with the infamous Nazi supervillain Masterman, and they kidnap the Human Torch by grabbing the woman that he's with. And this is actually the wife of the Human Torch's original sidekick, Toro, because apparently back in World War II, in those early days of the golden age of comics, they thought it was important for all the superheroes to have sidekicks. So we had things like Captain America with Bucky, and then the Human Torch had Toro, who was his kid sidekick. And here, this is Toro's wife many years later, and she's essentially, they're developing a relationship of their own here, kind of a Vision and Scarlet Witch thing, all their own. But that's how they're able to capture him without much of a fuss, is by grabbing her. I love that Byrne always tried to keep up with the times and the fashion especially. And you see these very dated, very 80s this very S&M type leather daddy style appearing here in with Masterman. And I like that. I think that the colorist actually messed up on this and makes it look like he's just wearing a dog collar, but it's supposed to be an extension of his overall regular Masterman uniform. But I think it's just hilarious that these guys are dressed up like the Nihilists in The Big Lebowski. I thought that was pretty interesting. And this is several years before that film. It is worth noting. So anyway, so this is important to note that the Human Torch gets kidnapped. And then the storyline picks up here in number 10. Namor and Namorita make their way to Germany to investigate the German branch of their Oracle Corporation, but not before a prologue. I love in the old days how they had these exposition dumps here right at the top of the book. Though I suppose with modern books, people would probably be a bit more accepting of them if they were like a sidebar, almost like a drop-down menu for a computer, or even a crawl across the bottom. So it's interesting to see how that kind of moves around and changes. John Byrne's credits are always mutating. In this one, he simply uses words and pictures. John Byrne, colors by Glynis Oliver. But we've got a flashback to 1945 and the end of the war. With the fall of Berlin, you've got Baron von Strucker here speaking with the Dr. Kraus, who's the central big bad guy behind this particular plot line. We reveal the involvement of Masterman and Warrior Woman here at the end of the war. This is all good stuff. And then we flash back to today, New York, New York. I love that they kind of depowered Namor a little bit in this series by removing his wings and also taking him out of the water. It made him a bit more vulnerable, which is good. Your heroes have to have a certain amount of vulnerability. I mean, it's hard to write ongoing stories for characters that are all powerful, like Superman or Miracle Man or what have you. That's why it's very rare to find the really, really good ones. But I like Byrne's use of the medium here, how he takes advantage of creating a political cartoon by giving us Namor's point of view. This is almost a cinematic look-see. Here we see what he's looking at from Namor's point of view, and then we see him looking. So it's a look-see. He recaps you on everything that's gone on before. You know, it's very word-heavy, but this was a fun series. It's Byrne's art at the height of his art, but he was experimenting with this particular zipatone in this, and honestly, I'm not a fan of it. Maybe it's just because the colors are so garish at this time in Marvel Comics that it just made everything look ugly. Like, I might have liked his use of zips more in a black and white version where it would be used to give the forms a bit more depth, but I don't know. I'm not a fan of it in this book, and that's really the only thing that hurts it in my mind. Here we have a nice little guest appearance by the one and only Captain America, where he's talking to him about what's going on. This was an interesting bit of keeping up with the times here, because the Berlin Wall had just fallen, and they basically use those news headlines to say, hey, let's bring back an old school bad guy Nazi storyline. So Namor takes his private jet. Nice little ad for the Dungeon board game there back in the day. This is a subplot involving the return of Danny Rand, aka the Iron Fist. We're not going to cover that today, though, because we'll probably cover all things Iron Fist and John Byrne at some point or another in the comic book dojo. So here they're telling you that they've finally gained access to this hidden laboratory. They've been cut off from it for years because of the wall. And when they go inside, they find the Warrior Woman emerging from suspended animation somewhat. And they talk about how the process was a bit incomplete, or was perhaps damaged because it was neglected over the years. They weren't able to attend to it. So you see the return of this Dr. Kraus, who's the guy behind all this stuff. And he has this nice yellowish green, ghoulish shading to go on with him, which is an interesting decision. Ad for the old collector's cards, which I had all of those, but man, I don't know why. Master Man gets a little excited because Warrior Woman's not waking up immediately, and then they reveal that they've got the Human Torch strapped down over here, and they're going to use his magical android blood. Though they don't call it magical, it's just that because it's android blood, it does all these things. In modern writers probably would have made it like his nanite bloodstream, something to that effect, which would make sense as to why it's used in so many places, almost like the black goo in Prometheus, where it just pretty much just does anything. So Marvel writers, take note: if you have access to the android Human Torch and his android blood, you can use it for pretty much anything. So Namor is investigating all these things, and from what I could tell, this is a building that is a subsidiary of his company, something to that effect. So when he goes to investigate it, of course, he finds Master Man and Dr. Kraus in the midst of their full shenanigans. Fight ensues. This is good stuff because Namor is a bit depowered, so he's going up against Master Man, who's kind of Marvel Superman levels. I mean, the real Superman is obviously much more powerful, but that's kind of the template for the Master Man. Big, strong guy that could go toe to toe with any of your powerhouse characters. Here, Kraus pushes forward with the reanimation process. Now that they've used the Human Torch's blood, and the Warrior Woman snaps back to life. This is a nice little callback to the Bride of Frankenstein here, as she arches up on the table and he shouts, "She lives! She lives!" Instead of "she's alive, she's alive," but it's an obvious Bride of Frankenstein homage. Nice little hard-hitting fight here. We see a full Nelson in use. You got a reversal with some sort of throw, no doubt from learning judo from Cap, as we always know. Anybody that's been on a team with Cap, they took some judo lessons at one point or another. So Namor reverses him. Great use of the panels to accentuate the action here by Byrne. He was always just a master at that. Flying up, the flying Superman punch, as we'll call it. And then he busts out a nice flying sidekick, a jump sidekick. That's rare to see. And then another flying Superman punch back down. So he's just zipping all across the page. Great use of motion here by Byrne. Again, the colors, I think, really hurt this. You see a lot of the browns and grays. They all just become kind of a muted mess there in the background, which is a shame because Byrne's art is still solid at this point. I'm still a big fan of it, even though I don't like the way these zips look. For some reason, it just makes his art look a bit muddy. And then here, the reanimated Warrior Woman joins in by clonking him in the back of the head. I like how he has the little stars, like the cartoonish, the cartoon stars that the characters always see when they get their bell rung. And you end in a moment of triumph for Master Man and his reanimated Warrior Woman. And they've got a nice little dedication here at the end for Frank Robbins, which was cool. It was a nice little touch. I also thought it was interesting that there's this particular ad here at the back. I don't remember if this page was in any other books of the time. I'll need to go dig through my long boxes to see what I can see. But they talk about before there were Marvel Comics, there was Marvel Comics, the actual series Marvel Comics published by Timely Comics back in 1939. So it's interesting that they point out that this is where we had characters such as Human Torch, Kazar, and Namor the Sub-mariner all introduced. But they also call it a Silver Age. Yeah, they say this is one of the rarest, most sought-after comics of the Silver Age, but that was actually the Golden Age. So they flubbed up their age of comics there. But they're advertising a hardcover collection coming out. This is post-Marvel graphic novels, so they had the name and the nomenclature of the graphic novel to use at the time, but they just call it a hardcover edition. Nothing, no special attributes given to it other than that. Here we see a nice Jim Lee Punisher ad for the video game. Had a nice cliffhanger there. At the end of that one, we pick up with Namor's defeat at the hands of the agents of the Axis. Now I wonder if Byrne actually just drew this out like a regular picture because, and then cut it up and just moved two panels down and then came back and finished in the panel borders, because at the time a lot of Byrne's splash pages were getting really kind of lazy. I mean, they were a lot of close-ups, just big giant face shots, that weren't real spectacular like you can see it here on the cover of this. Everything is drawn well, it's rendered nicely, but it's just not an exciting or dynamic design. And again, who am I to critique Byrne, but I'm just pointing out the obvious. But flip to the next page and you see he's not lazy at all. He was great at these technological whiz gigs and whirly machines. Just fantastic stuff. It was different from the Kirby type stuff. I mean, I wonder if he was using industrial photos as reference or what have you. Nice little flashback to give some background for Namor. And Byrne uses that shooter era approach of every comic is someone's first comic. They do a lot of introducing, a lot of rehashing what happened before, making sure to tell you that these characters have known each other since World War II. And here you see them talking to Winston Churchill. No, this is first. This is the president, and then it's Churchill. So he's actually having these. His memory is flashing backwards and forwards. He's hallucinating, and he says time is getting discombobulated here. All good stuff. You see the warrior woman here, and in her full Ilsa She-Wolf of the SS type pose there. Byrne was obviously having a lot of fun with this. You see the S&M as a recurring motif in a lot of Byrne's 80s works, and I thought that was pretty funny. And here she just gets bad at this guy and whips him and pulls him into the machine, which makes it explode. So just bizarre stuff here. This part of the flashback is a retelling of Namor's introduction into the modern Marvel universe. So in some ways, this is kind of one of those a little bit of a grand design book in that it retells some of the Golden Age storylines from and the reuniting, obviously, of Namor with the modern age of Marvel Comics. So maybe not so much a grand design, but you have those little origin flashback pieces here. Give it a little bit of that feel. And nowadays we look at this and we go, they're just being abusive and mean to this poor homeless guy. Like, what if it's not actually Namor and he's just some guy that wants to be left alone and they grab him and shave him? You think about that. It's just a horrible way to treat somebody. Flashback to almost the present, where we have to see again what just happened at the end of the previous book, where Namor discovers the experiment. He rushes in, gets ambushed from behind. Now he's captured, and boom, that's how he made it into his current predicament. Here again, we see the S&M side coming through. You've got a woman in a cage there. It's another good political type title for you, Women in Cages. Roger Corman would be proud of that particular storytelling trope, I suppose. Byrne's great, just techno stuff. These Rube Goldbergian machines that are just complicated with gadgets and dials and little buzzers and screens everywhere. And it's just believable. It's great stuff. Great stuff. We catch up with Master Man and Warrior Woman, and we learn about another one of the antagonists behind all of this, and we're introduced to Herr Nacht, which is, best I can tell, Nacht is night, so it's like Mr. Knight, so it's kind of a cool name. But he is the new Master Man. He's just some rich guy. Of course, this particular book and all these storylines involve Namor as the corporate head, so all of his major villains have to be some other type of opposing corporate head. So that's what Herr Nacht is here. He owns his own evil corporation, and he wants to be the new Master Man. He covets Warrior Woman. Again, I love the nihilistic look here. The Byrne tapping into the current 80s fashion here. This hilarious stuff. Krauss in his off-colored skin. which is a little hint as to his true origin. Here we have another page of the Danny Rand subplot before we bounce back to seeing Jim Hammond's, well, his love interest now, but it's actually Toro's wife, and she's being beaten and punished by the madam here. Namor just gets mad and powers up and just explodes out of this machine, even though it's supposedly been drying him out so badly that his skin is blistered. So this is a great, just a little bit of a visual cue with the blistering on the skin to show that Namor is weakened. We are nihilists. We believe in nothing. No, you're Lebowski. This old Silver Surfer game, man, I wanted to love it. I wanted to have fun with it, but boy, was it hard to play and just not a whole lot of fun, but had some nice Ron Lim artwork. Apparently, back in those Marvel days, back in the heyday of the Marvel's 80s, the 70s and 80s and early 90s, when those guys couldn't get good deals from Marvel, they went over and did the comic book ads. That's why you see the Jim Lee Punisher ads and stuff like that. And here you got Ron Lim artwork on the Silver Surfer ad. And here, this is great. Because Namor is so weak, the Nihilists can kind of rough him up a little bit. But he just decides he's had enough of that, starts throwing them around. And this is Namor doing his best Wolverine impression. You even see the little bearing of the fangs there in the mouth. Nice pointed ears. And instead of the Logan body hair, he has the blisters that are all over his skin because they were drying him out. So, interesting little callback there. Nice little dust up here. Just fighting regular powered guys. Normally, they would be no kind of challenge for someone like Namor. But because he's been weakened, they can keep him occupied at least. And try to overwhelm him with their numbers. And he starts flashing back, hallucinating. They're intermingling all together, and he sees the invaders come rushing in to save him. And I thought this would have been a really good place to end this, but, Byrne gives this a false ending by then flipping over and reminding you that these guys are all still in this tower and giving you this little plot beat of where Herr Nacht sends Masterman to confront the Submariner. And honestly, that gives it a false ending, and this is a much weaker ending. And even the artwork is uninspired. This almost looks like a Rob Liefeld piece, believe it or not. And Nacht he's just flying in his regular suit. I mean, not Nacht, but this is Masterman. This is Herr Nacht over here. But Masterman, he's just flying in his regular business suit with his little nihilist leather jacket. So pretty uninspired ending there to close that out. And again, the Jim Lee Punisher advertisement for the NES, which brings us up to the grand finale, issue 12. The invaders fight again, bursting from the blazing battlefields of World War II. Giant-sized anniversary issue. This issue is my original copy that I bought off the shelf. I had been buying Namor at the time, just on and off since the first issue. And I had kind of dropped out during what I considered a really uninspired stretch, this particular storyline. But the invaders pulled me right back in. It's 4-color, it's superhero, it's everything that you love about superhero comics. Great massive bodies just battling here. I mean, Byrne was really just in command of this medium at the time. I mean, he wasn't doing the experimental stuff as much as someone like a Frank Miller or your Starankos or your Howard Chaykin. But in terms of just clearly telling the story, making sure that the stakes are related, making sure that the emotions are clearly relayed, the action is clear, you can tell what's happening, and just by keeping them exciting and dynamic. I mean, he was fantastic at it. He was just really hampered by the coloring at the time. In this book, it looks a little bit better than the previous issues. It's not so glaring as and garish as the palettes of the other issues, but Byrne continues with that zip experiment that's going on. It looks better in some panels than in others. Here it looks really good. As you see the Human Torch there laid up on his little laboratory bed. The invaders come in, but it's not really the invaders. He's seeing the young Spitfire, Union Jack, and his cousin ្neɪmɔːr, who did not fight along with the invaders, but a few issues later, and then we have this horrible flashback. Byrne is really filling pages here. Like, he could not just focus on the story at hand, but he backs up to tell you how all these guys made their way into it. It's almost like a film noir, detective story, Philip Marlowe type thing, book ending, where you start at your ending and then you back up and catch everybody up to speed. And he decides to do that here in issue 12, which this reads really well for, the individual publications, but in like a collected trade paperback or whatnot, it wouldn't read as well. But this was a very different time for publishing in Marvel. We're talking about over 30 years now. I mean, believe it or not. Audiences have definitely matured and advanced, and they're much more sophisticated than they used to be. And they also kind of expect books to be collected issues to be represented in graphic novels, and they expect graphic novels to read as graphic novels. So here you have ្neɪmɔːrita, who follows, which I guess is Little Namor in Espanol, who follows Namor, sees him going into the warehouse, realizes he's been captured by the axis of evil there, and sets off to get help from Lady Jacqueline here, who is the retired Spitfire. Oh, I flipped over a page. Here we go. She calls the Avengers first. Here you see an old cameo from Cersei of the Eternals when she was an Avenger. So you see there is a reason that the Eternals film was released, I suppose, because some of them might cross over into being Avengers, believe it or not. And then she makes her way to meet over with Jacqueline, the long-retired Spitfire. This is a really great page where they walk into her barn, and it opens up, and she's got her plane in here. I don't know if this is an actual Spitfire or a modified version or what have you, but I'm going to assume that it is a Spitfire of some sort. Again, the coloring kind of hurts it. You got that drab olives and browns. Make the whole thing just a big mess, which is a shame because Byrne's rendering is really nice here. Here we see the unfavorable zipatone, which I just don't like on this for some reason. I do like, I think the Union Jack redesign here is decent. I mean, it's pretty much in line with the times, and it would probably look good on film nowadays. I mean, that's pretty much what comics are becoming, or new billboards and laboratories for what will be presented on film. Although, as we know, and as the viewers of Comic-Jutsu know, comics are not film. Time moves differently through them. The reader has control over the time. So in film, that's all locked in and determined by the editing. The pacing can never change. You can just walk away from it and then come back. But with a comic book, you are in control of the flow of time. That's a unique relationship between the artist, the work itself, and the reader, which is you. So here you go. You see this. Her little Spitfire's got vertical takeoff and landing capability. She makes a little Back to the Future recall. She says, there's not enough room for a runway. Oh, that's no bother, Jack. We don't need one. Roads, where we're going, we don't need roads. So good stuff. So here you go. You get caught up on how the invaders are here, even though it's not the real invaders. He's just hallucinating. They jump in. Union Jack helps out. Pow! At one point, he explains he was given superpowers by the Green Knight. I'm not sure when that happened, but hey, now he's superpowered, so there you go. Namor rejuvenates himself by dumping the water cooler bottle on himself just in time to face off with Masterman, who is still in his ugly nihilist business suit and leather jacket, his S&M jacket. Here, even this cut to this little inset panel, looking up at Harrnock's building, is very uninspired. He's continuing his seduction of Warrior Woman. I like that they have the photo album out here. This is great for just relaying some information. So you see how he was obsessed with Warrior Woman and had photos. Nowadays, in a modern book, that would be, just an image on an iPad or a laptop or something to that effect. He continues trying to seduce her, but she doesn't quite give in to his needs. And they go into a heavy exposition dump here, how the animation process, the suspended animation process, might have confused her or something to that effect. Then we cut over to Namor having this battle with Master Man in his horrible outfit. Nice little headbutt there from Union Jack. All good stuff. I mean, Byrne he keeps the story going. We see that Master Man, the original Master Man, Willie Loman, as he's named here, that's funny. He starts reverting to his non-superpowered self, and they say that was part of the plan. He was supposed to lose his powers after he outlived his usefulness. And then you've got Namorita squaring off with Warrior Woman here, who's essentially a Wonder Woman XP, Again, the left cross from Master Man, the cartoon stars. Namor just using superior super strength. Pang! Wang! Smashes him into the wall. They go to help the Human Torch. They confront Dr. Kraus there, who shoots Spitfire, mortally wounding her. And then suddenly, Deus Ex Machina in the form of Captain America, he shows up, punching Harrnock, just like he punched Hitler on the pages of Captain America Comics #1. Lo, those many years ago. Lots of nice callbacks here. You can see that Byrne is really just having fun with this. Master Man lunges at him, uses his acrobatics to get out of the way. Namor dusts him off. Nice left cross, right uppercut. Byrne loves those uppercuts in vertical panels like that. You've got Warrior Woman slinging Namorita around, which shows that she's pretty strong. Spitfire apparently broke the apparatus that was keeping Dr. Kraus alive, and he withers away. You've got your little Raiders of the Lost Ark melting Nazis there at the end. Good stuff. It's all just fun callbacks. Here she says she's going to die. She's been mortally wounded. And the Human Torch, Jim Hammond, says, "No, I will use my android blood yet again to keep you from dying." So he gives her another transfusion. There's that Byrne uppercut. That means somebody taught Namorita that at some point. In the timeline, Namorita was a part of the new Warriors. So who knows? Maybe Night Thrasher taught her some of those uppercuts. Here you go. Classic Byrne ending. If you don't know where to end with an explosion. He does that all the time. Little Willie Loman goes over and he pulls the lever you're not supposed to pull that makes everything explode. The invaders decide to GTFO, grabbing the civilians, even saving some of the nihilists. There you go. And they find Human Torch and they realize that he has died, using his android blood to save the life of Spitfire. Lady Jacqueline, who has now saved, she's not only healed up, regenerated all of her wounds, but she is also de-aged somehow in the process. There you go. She looks like a young Lady Jacqueline now. And here it closes out with this little epilogue where the Oracle Company dedicates a monument to the memory of the original Human Torch. And this is just a nice little touch here, just letting readers know, like, hey, there was a Human Torch back in the Golden Age. He wasn't always Johnny Storm. Letting them know a piece of comics history, how all this stuff came about, how one influences the other. It's nice to see one come back for a little bit. But wait, even after Johnny Storm lights his funeral flame, whatever they call this, his memorial flame, you see that he is still alive. There he is. And that, lo, the blood transfusion did not cause him to lose his life, but he did lose his superpowers. So there you go. That's how they kind of wrap it up in this nobody dies, none of the good guys die issue. Everything that you need to have happen happens. But there you go. Good enough anyway. He says he's going to go on a vacation as he's developed a relationship here with the wife of Toro, which is cool. The widow of Toro, who has long since passed. Namor offers him a job as head of security for the Oracle Company. And there you have it. Everyone is happy. But not for long. For the next issue, Namor must reap the whirlwind. Classic storytelling from the House of Ideas. John Byrne was really at the top of his game for this series. And he just has fun with it. And it really shows. So there you go. Thanks for joining me for another Superhero Spotlight. JT McRoberts here. Buy my graphic novel. Follow me on Twitter. Like this video. Leave me some comments below. Is there a particular storyline of Namor, perhaps a more recent one, okay, that you think should be featured here on Superhero Spotlight as we continue to honor the life and legacy of the one Namor the Sub-mariner, Prince of Atlantis. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Mate!